You said just now that I always looked as if I was going to tell you a secret. You are right. I have a secret to tell you. A certain person has just let me know that she is very anxious for a secret interview with you." "Why should it be secret?" "Not at all. I will call on her myself tomorrow." "No, oh no!" cried Lebedeff, waving his arms. "If she is afraid, it is not for the reason you think. By the way, do you know that the monster comes every day to inquire after your health?" "You call him a monster so often that it makes me suspicious." "You must have no suspicions, none whatever," said Lebedeff quickly. "I only want you to know that the person in question is not afraid of him, but of something quite different." "What on earth is she afraid of, then? Tell me plainly, without any more beating about the bush," said the prince, exasperated by the other's mysterious grimaces. "Ah, that is the secret," said Lebedeff with a smile. "Whose secret?" "Yours. You forbade me yourself to mention it before you, most excellent prince," murmured Lebedeff. Then, satisfied that he had worked up Muishkin's curiosity to the highest pitch, he added abruptly, "She is afraid of Aglaya Ivanovna." The prince frowned for a moment in silence, and then said suddenly: "Really, Lebedeff, I must leave your house. Where are Gavrila Ardalionovitch and the Ptitsins? Are they here? Have you chased them away too?" They are coming, and the general as well. I will open all the doors. I will call all my daughters, all of them, this very minute," said Lebedeff in a low voice, thoroughly frightened, and waving his hands as he ran from door to door. At that moment Colia appeared on the terrace. He announced that Lizabetha Prokofievna and her 3 daughters were close behind him. Moved by this news, Lebedeff hurried up to the prince. "Shall I call the Ptitsins and Gavrila Ardalionovitch? Shall I let the general in?" he asked. "Why not? Let in anyone who wants to see me. I assure you, Lebedeff, you have misunderstood my position from the very first. You have been wrong all along. I have not the slightest reason to hide myself from anyone," replied the prince gaily. Seeing him laugh, Lebedeff thought fit to laugh also, and though much agitated, his satisfaction was quite visible. Colia was right. The Epanchin ladies were only a few steps behind him. As they approached the terrace, other visitors appeared from Lebedeff's side of the house, the Ptitsins, Gania, and Ardalion Alexandrovitch. The Epanchins had only just heard of the prince's illness and of his presence in Pavlofsk from Colia, and up to this time had been in a state of considerable bewilderment about him. The general brought the prince's card down from town, and Mrs. Epanchin had felt convinced that he himself would follow his card at once. She was much excited. In vain the girls assured her that a man who had not written for 6 months would not be in such a dreadful hurry, and that probably he had enough to do in town without needing to bustle down to Pavlofsk to see them. Their mother was quite angry at the very idea of such a thing, and announced her absolute conviction that he would turn up the next day at latest. So next day the prince was expected all the morning, and at dinner, tea, and supper, and when he did not appear in the evening, Mrs. Epanchin quarrelled with everyone in the house, finding plenty of pretexts, without so much as mentioning the prince's name. On the 3rd day there was no talk of him at all, until Aglaya remarked at dinner, "Mamma is cross because the prince hasn't turned up," to which the general replied that it was not his fault. Mrs. Epanchin misunderstood the observation, and rising from her place, she left the room in majestic wrath. In the evening, however, Colia came with the story of the prince's adventures, so far as he knew them. Mrs. Epanchin was triumphant, although Colia had to listen to a long lecture. "He idles about here the whole day long. One can't get rid of him. And then, when he is wanted, he does not come. He might have sent a line if he did not wish to inconvenience himself." At the words, "one can't get rid of him," Colia was very angry, and nearly flew into a rage, but he resolved to be quiet for the time, and show his resentment later. If the words had been less offensive, he might have forgiven them, so pleased was he to see Lizabetha Prokofievna worried and anxious about the prince's illness. She would have insisted on sending to Petersburg at once, for a certain great medical celebrity, but her daughters dissuaded her, though they were not willing to stay behind when she at once prepared to go and visit the invalid. Aglaya, however, suggested that it was a little unceremonious to go en masse to see him. "Very well then, stay at home," said Mrs. Epanchin. "And a good thing too, for Evgenie Pavlovitch is coming down, and there will be no one at home to receive him." Of course, after this, Aglaya went with the rest. In fact, she had never had the slightest intention of doing otherwise. Prince S., who was in the house, was requested to escort the ladies. He had been much interested when he first heard of the prince from the Epanchins. It appeared that they had known one another before, and had spent some time together in a little provincial town 3 months ago. Prince S. had greatly taken to him, and was delighted with the opportunity of meeting him again. The general had not come down from town as yet, nor had Evgenie Pavlovitch arrived. It was not more than 200 or 300 yards from the Epanchins' house to Lebedeff's. The first disagreeable impression experienced by Mrs. Epanchin was to find the prince surrounded by a whole assembly of other guests, not to mention the fact that some of those present were particularly detestable in her eyes. The next annoying circumstance was when an apparently strong and healthy young fellow, well dressed and smiling, came forward to meet her on the terrace, instead of the half-dying unfortunate whom she had expected to see. She was astonished and vexed, and her disappointment pleased Colia immensely. Of course, he could have undeceived her before she started, but the mischievous boy had been careful not to do that, foreseeing the probably laughable disgust that she would experience when she found her dear friend, the prince, in good health. Colia was indelicate enough to voice the delight he felt at his success in managing to annoy Lizabetha Prokofievna, with whom, in spite of their really amicable relations, he was constantly sparring. "Just wait a while, my boy," said she. "Don't be too certain of your triumph." And she sat down heavily in the armchair pushed forward by the prince. Lebedeff, Ptitsin, and General Ivolgin hastened to find chairs for the young ladies. Varia greeted them joyfully, and they exchanged confidences in ecstatic whispers. "I must admit, prince, I was a little put out to see you up and about like this. I expected to find you in bed. But I give you my word I was only annoyed for an instant, before I collected my thoughts properly. I am always wiser on second thoughts, and I dare say you are the same. I assure you I am as glad to see you well as though you were my own son. Yes, and more. And if you don't believe me, the more shame to you, and it's not my fault. But that spiteful boy delights in playing all sorts of tricks. You are his patron, it seems. Well, I warn you that